Slate. Thank you.
That's so good.
Yeah, that was like.
Could you quickly introduce yourself and say what you do?
Yeah, my name is Haviv Avrahami. I am a PhD student at North Carolina State University, and I am also the digital technician for the Dueling Dinosaurs laboratory here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences.
What do you like about being a paleontologist?
What do I like about being a paleontologist? There's so much. I guess one of the big things is being able to do kind of forensic style investigations into mysteries of the distant past. So being able to study these animals that are coming out of the ground for the first time. They're brand new information, brand new knowledge, and we're at the front lines of those discoveries. And so being able to figure out what animals were like millions of years ago and how they interacted with their ecosystem and the different shapes and forms that their bodies evolved into is just so fascinating. And then there's also another aspect, which is being able to go out into the desert to look for and explore for these different kinds of fossils. There's also like the technical aspect side of things. It's just so great to be in a job where there's always something new to handle, or there's a new way to kind of solve a problem. There's constant novelty. And I think that's one of the things I really love about paleontology is the constant novelty. Everything is always so new. Nothing gets mundane.
So you mentioned the dig site and how fun and novel it was to do all these different things in paleontology. What would you say is the most exciting thing about working at a dig site?
What's the most exciting thing about working at a dig site? I don't know what the most exciting thing is. I'd say one of my favorite things about working at a dig site, or what we call quarrying, is being able to work in a team with people. These kinds of operations would be impossible if you didn't have a team of people. I mean, there's some times where there's a small quarry where you can work it by yourself. I've done that a few times before, but most of the time we open up these big pits in the ground that are about the size of a swimming pool. And you have to work with other people to be able to effectively excavate those fossils. So there's things like quarry mapping and gridding, creating grids, and there are times we have to take turns coming on and off of the quarry when we're opening it up, because we have to use old techniques like rock hammers and shovels and things like that. So it can get pretty tiring. So I'd say the teamwork is a fantastic component of working at a dig site. It's also just it's very stratified in the scale of the tools we use. So we start off sometimes with bigger tools like rock hammers and shovels, and as we get closer and closer to the bone layer, our tools start to get tinier and tinier, to the point where we're sometimes at the very end, we're just using tiny brushes and little tiny dental tools. And that's the part that I really like, is when we get to the dental tool parts, because usually you're just working around a tiny fossil, and it's so delicate and so technical. I really like that technical aspect of it.
When you first saw a fossil at the Utah dig site, what did you feel? What was the energy like in your team?
Oh, I have to go back to 2015 to remember what the first Fona dig site was that I worked. That was a long time ago. It was a small team of us. I think there were about 5 of us. But it was exciting. We knew we had a new animal. We didn't know what it was. Usually when we find these potential dig sites that contain Fona, a lot of times we actually think it's a theropod dinosaur. One of the sites that we actually found was called Last Chance Theropod, because when we first found it, the bones of Fona are very similar to kind of these small Dromaeosaurus-style velociraptor dinosaurs. They're similar in that they look hollow, and so a lot of times we think we have a theropod. And theropods are very rare, so we get really excited if we think we found a new one. It doesn't mean that Fona is not still cool. And so, but we're really excited at the beginning. And we also usually have a lot of energy because when we open a quarry for the first time, it's usually at the beginning of a field season. So we all have a lot of energy because we haven't been out in the field for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So we have a lot of energy, and we're all ready for the physical work. Especially since, when we fly into the field, a lot of times it means that we've been sitting down in our offices for months throughout the year, and so it's kind of a way of just being able to get active again. Yeah.
Could you briefly describe what a theropod is?
What a theropod is? Okay. So a theropod dinosaur is basically a branch of dinosaur lineages that are usually the carnivores. When we think about the dinosaurs that are popularly familiar with, we think of plant eaters, which are usually the big-bodied hadrosaurs, and there are stegosaurs and ankylosaurs and the dome-headed pachycephalosaurs. Those are one group of dinosaurs, one out of the 3 well-known major groups. Those are the ornithischians. Then there's another group of plant-eating dinosaurs that we're familiar with, and those are the long-necked sauropods. Those are the biggest dinosaurs that ever existed. Then there's the theropods, which are, the scientific term is called saurischians. And those are the ones that are usually carnivores. And it's actually the lineage that birds are from. Fona is an ornithischian, so it was in the plant eater group, the first group that I mentioned. And it was really primitive. That's why it kind of maintained that primitive body style, because it was a smaller animal. It kind of retained that primitive body plan.
When you say primitive body plan, what does that mean exactly? Like in the details of the bone structure or what you can tell from the fossil itself? Obviously, you don't have to sit in the soft tissue.
That's a good question. What does primitive mean? I guess it's a colloquial term. I mean, it's not appropriate necessarily if you're talking about the specific scientific terminology. We tend to use words that are things like earlier diverging or late diverging or derived or ancestral features. I guess what I would say is that for Fona specifically, what it means kind of maintaining a primitive body plan is that Fona lived during the mid-Cretaceous. There's hundreds of millions of years, there's several million years that passed between when Fona existed and the dawn of when dinosaurs evolved in the Triassic period. But the earliest ornithischians, the earliest group of plant-eating ornithischian dinosaurs looked similar to what Fona looked like. This is before they evolved into these really big body sizes, and they evolved all these elaborate ornamentations and features like armor or cranial crests, things like that. Before all those animals evolved all the bells and whistles, they maintained a primitive body plan, kind of like what Fona was. So small-bodied, bipedal usually, and and it kind of looked like that. So.
What is bipedal?
Sorry, that's good. I should have specified that. I don't know if that's a scientific jargon term. Oh, sorry.
I don't know where that is. Hang on.
Okie doke.
We're good now that I take care of it. We'll go on.
Bipedal just means that they walked around on their 2 hind legs. Yeah. So bipedal means that they walked around on 2 legs rather than using their hands to turn into an extra pair of legs.
And going back to the dig site, what can you tell at the dig site and what can you not tell when you're there in person?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What can you tell about a fossil or a possible dinosaur at the dig site and what can you not tell there that you have to do later in the lab?
That's a good question. Well, usually when we find a dig site, okay, let me step back for a moment and say, when we're in the field, there's 2 main objectives. When we're in the field, there's 2 main objectives that we have. One of them is working at quarries. A lot of times this means that we're working at quarries that have been found in the past. But that leads to the second main thing we have to do is that we have to find these quarries, and that's prospecting. And those are really fun days where we get to go out into the desert and we just walk around. And we don't know really where to look for. We know the specific layer of rock sometimes that we're supposed to aim at. Don't go too high or you'll end up in a different time. Don't go too low, you'll end up back in the past. And maybe that's representing, those are rocks that are representing ecosystems that don't preserve fossils. Sometimes we have a sweet spot, a layer of rock to look for. We aim for those layers, but we don't know where the fossils are, so we just have to find them. If we're lucky, we'll stumble upon an area where there's a little bit of fossils coming out of the ground, almost like the beginning of a tapped spring. We don't always know what's going to be under there. Sometimes when we dig in, there's nothing left. It's all eroded. Maybe we're a few thousand years too late, and all the bones have been eroded out, and all that remains is a few tail bones or maybe nothing left in the bedrock. But if we're lucky, we'll dig in and we'll find what's preserved of an entire fossil site. Sometimes that's one animal, sometimes that's multiple animals of the same species. Sometimes, if we're really lucky, it can represent a multi-taxonomic bone bed, which basically means a little pocket of multiple animals preserved at the same time in the same location. So when we start at those quarries, when we are lucky and when we do find the fossils in the ground, it's very exciting because then we have to start digging down into the ground. But there's things that we can't do. The main thing is our objective when we're working a quarry. The number one objective, obviously first, is safety. So that's the safety of us, of the team, but also the fossils. We have to do everything we have to do everything we can to make sure that the fossils are protected. You've got to remember that this is the first time these bones are being exposed to the environment, the outside environment, for the first time in 100 million years sometimes. So it's very important to, as soon as we excavate the fossils, to protect them. When we use certain chemicals like consolidants that are dissolvable in acetone or things like that, we use certain chemicals that act like glue to keep the fossil safe and protected from the environment. But the main thing that we use is plaster. So we take plaster strips. Sometimes these are like medical bandages if the fossil is small. And sometimes if they're bigger, what we have to do is use burlap and then plaster mix, which is like a cement mix. And we take those and cover the fossils in layers and layers of this until we get a shell around the fossil. That's the only way that we can get those fossils and bring them back into our laboratory, because we can't do the detailed observations of the fossils in the field. It's too dangerous for the fossils. The lighting is bad, the temperature is too hot, we don't have the right tools, and mainly we don't have the ability to really clean up the fossils. Fossils a lot of the time are covered in mud, covered in little pieces of dirt, so we have to bring them back to our laboratory where our preparators can use things like dental scribes, which are really tiny, almost like tattoo guns, to kind of break away the really fine mud from the bone under the microscope. And that's just something we wouldn't be able to do in the field.
So how did you originally get interested in dinosaurs and paleontology?
How did I originally get interested in dinosaurs? Well, I think my fascination with dinosaurs started off, obviously, when I was a kid, like most kids. I think dinosaurs have a universal appeal to young people because they kind of bridge the gap between fantasy and reality. It's imagining that there were these ancient creatures that lived on Earth that took on these wild forms and effectively seemed like the monsters in our fantasies, but they were real. And I think that's one thing that really captivated me as a kid. I was a fan of a lot of the media like Jurassic Park and Land Before Time. There's in fact a game that I played that I really enjoyed when I was a kid called Dino Crisis, which was like a survival horror game, and I thought that was really fun. It was on the PlayStation 1. So I think that's where kind of the fascination began, and a lot of the interest. And then I grew up and I became a teenager and I started to be interested in other things. And I still remain fascinated and eager to investigate dinosaurs and read about them, but I was distracted by the years of being a teenager, things like that. And high school was really hard for me because I had ADHD and there was things going on at home that made school hard for me to kind of really focus. I didn't really see it as maybe the thing that I could be good at. I actually ended up not finishing high school with my peers. But when I started taking community colleges at my local community college in Winston-Salem for Sci Tech and then later on at Wake Tech, I started taking geology classes and Earth life and life history classes. And that's where I really started to re-engage my brain and really find a renewed fascination for deep time, for aspects of geology and biology and the prehistoric past. And so when I started taking those classes, I started becoming interested again, and I started reading about dinosaurs again, and I found out, I've always had the mentality of when there's something that you find that you're passionate about, you just gotta go for it. You gotta take that leap. And I had good friends that were supporting me at my local church youth group, and my family members that really encouraged me to stay back in school and to kind of pursue my dreams and pursue this fascination. And I found out about professors here at North Carolina State. At this time I was in Winston-Salem. And so when I found out that there were people, researchers working on dinosaurs here in my own state in North Carolina, only a 2-hour drive away, I sent some emails and I drove and I asked, hey, can I have a meeting with you? Can I talk a little bit about what is it like to be a paleontologist? What is it like to be in the field? I did that once and I was invited to a local conference that was happening at this time. And I went to that and that's a society for which now I'm part of. I'm part of the committee that oversees student and postdoc affairs. But back then, I was just an undergrad. And when I went, I was excited and overwhelmed at the same time. And that's when I really decided, wow, paleontology, this has got to be the thing for me. And so that's kind of where I started putting the pieces into place to figure out how to get to an institution like this.
What would you say to a young student or even your past self about getting into the field of paleontology? How would you encourage them or tell them where they need to go?
I think about this question a lot. There's so much to say to someone that's young about if they're interested in being a paleontologist or a scientist. I think one of the first things that I like to emphasize is, one, if school's hard for you, don't let that discourage you, because it's still hard for me. And it's okay. Not everybody is like A++ student. If you make a bad grade here or there, or if you find times in life where you're just not enjoying school, just understand that it gets better. It's different later on. It's different once you get into college. It's different once you get into graduate school. A lot of times once you get into graduate school, it's more like an internship. For young people though, one thing I like to emphasize is stay curious and stay fascinated. Do what you can to read it and to excite that passion. But one thing is really try to focus on falling in love with the process of science in general. Don't narrow yourself to, all I want to do is be a paleontologist. That's not the right conversation to have in your head. The right conversation to have is, I love the process of science. I want to do science. That will open up so many gateways. Because here's the great thing about paleontology. Nobody gets a degree in paleontology. That's not a thing that exists. People get usually a degree in geology or biology if they want to become a paleontologist. But now more than ever, paleontology is such an interdisciplinary science. Paleontology is such an interdisciplinary science that's incorporating fields from across the scientific world. We need people who are chemists, who are physicists, and especially now, data science and computer science are critical, statistics, things like that. So just because maybe a university doesn't offer paleontology courses doesn't mean that somebody should get discouraged, or just because you live in a state where there are not dinosaurs or fossils preserved doesn't mean that you can't pursue paleontology. And it also doesn't mean that life will be over just because you don't become a theropod dinosaur paleontologist. Don't lock yourself into the taxons, don't lock yourself into these narrow, like, this is how it has to go. As if you're in love with the process of science, the world is your oyster. Thanks.
All right, just to wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to say that I didn't ask you? Just keep it very short.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm happy to answer any more questions. I don't have anything off the top of my head about anything else. I don't know. I don't think so.
But we're going to have a lot of time later today and tomorrow. So.
Room tone.
get the back on the camera.
You're good. Yeah, we're rolling.
So explain to us what's going on here with this modeling, what we're seeing on the monitor.
So over here is our digital workstation in the Dueling Dinosaurs laboratory.
Let's start again.
Okay.
Don't look at the camera, just make sure.
Just look
So,
at
oh,
the-
did I look at the camera? Oh,
Do not look at the camera.
okay, yeah,
Right
sorry.
here, or I'll be doing this. Here we go.
So just explain to us what is going on here, what we're seeing on this monitor, what this station is.
So this is our digital workstation in the Dueling Dinosaurs laboratory, and this is where we do a lot of the work that involves CT scanning, surface scanning, our imaging, and other things related to that. So on the screen right here is the digital 3D model of the entire skull. This was actually featured in the paper. This is a reconstruction of the skull of Fona. And so we have the digital version here, and then we have the 3D printed version here. Now, in order to build something like this, it takes a lot of steps and a lot of different software. So the first thing is that each one of these individual skull bones, every single one, about 30 bones sometimes, in some animals they can be 50, each one of those individual bones is scanned independently. And I use a program actually on the iPhone where all the 3D scanning is done in the application on the phone. And then we take these individual models and we bring them into a program like this. This program is called Blender, and it's a free-to-use 3D program. It's kind of like a multi-tool of the 3D world. A lot of video game industries use it. And we bring in all those individual fossils, and then we can kind of reconstruct what the fossil looked like in life. Because here's the thing. When we find fossils, they're not always in their original death positions. In Jurassic Park, we kind of see the dinosaur all together, but that's so rare. A lot of times with fossils, we only find a few bones, and sometimes even if we find a full skeleton, a lot of the bones have been disarticulated from each other. It's almost like a wine bottle that's been smashed and then all the pieces scattered around. Luckily with Fona, the really cool thing about Fona is it's postcranial skeleton. The part of the skeleton that's not the skull is in articulation. And that's really cool. But the skull, since the skull bones are so delicate, they've kind of been detached from each other and scattered around. And so we didn't know what the original skull looked like. We had to reconstruct it, and that's how we did it. We scanned all the bones, and we found the articulation joints, kind of the parts of the skull bones that fit together with the other ones, and we did that to kind of create this mosaic of what the skull probably looked like in real life.
Can we just stop for a second? You were holding that 3D skull. You get it closer to that top.
Oh, I am, like probably 30 seconds.
Well, no, not for now, but I thought while we're going to make it.
Could you explain if there's any indicators in the skull that helped you to identify the species? Or could you give some information comparing the skull of Fona to Willow's skull? And when you do that, if you could tell the camera which skull is which, that would be really helpful.
Okay. So I can pick up the skull? Okay. So this is the skull of Fona, and this is really cool. It has a number of...
Again,
Okay.
This is the skull. That's good. Anytime.
This is the skull of Fona, and it's really cool. It has a number of really interesting features. One of the really cool things about some of the older individuals of Fona, because remember, we have multiple specimens of this species. And so one of the cool things about the older guys is that the jawbone, this bone right here is called the jugal. This is the jawbone like what we have. And on it is an area right on the exterior surface that becomes really swollen. It's almost like a big pimple. And it's absent in some of the individuals, but it's present in other ones that we think are slightly older. We don't know quite why they do this with some of their skull bones, because it doesn't only get swollen, it also gets rugose. So it gets kind of this choppy surface texture. Now, if we look at the skull, of Thescelosaurus, so this is Thescelosaurus on the top, and this is slightly scaled down. So this isn't actually in life. It would be about twice the size, but you can kind of get a visual representation of what happened to the skulls of the Thescelosaurian lineage over that 30 million years from when Fona lived earlier in the Cretaceous to when Thescelosaurus lived later in the Cretaceous. And you can see that the skulls got dramatically more elongated, and they also increased the number of teeth in their jaw.
And what is the number of teeth indicate with that? Do you have any information on like why evolution? On why? Do you have any information on as to why that might have been an evolutionary change? Were they eating more of a specific? Were they eating more plants? Were they eating more? Sorry, it's not a good question, but do you have any information, or do you guys have any guesses as to why that the skulls changed in that way?
It's a good question. Why? I guess the thing with plant-eating dinosaurs and with archosaurs is they do dramatically complex things with their dentition across evolution.
Can you kind of simplify things?
Sorry, yeah.
Dentition, and rather than using the scientific name, if there's a more common name you can use, it would be better.
With plant-eating dinosaurs, they do very complex things with their teeth across the evolution of their lineages. Usually when dinosaurs start to get larger, they increase the size of their teeth. They also increase the number of teeth that they are producing in their mouth, and they modify the way that their feeding behavior occurs. Yeah.
With your hands.
Set that one down and then you pointed out, I think, the jaw, is that right? You pointed that again, please? Good.
And as you point, would you talk about it too? But just keep the pen there.
Okay. Yeah, this is the jugal bone. This is the jawbone of the dinosaur. It's kind of a really robust bone. Or hold on, let me back up. Yeah. So this is the jugal bone. It's the jawbone, and it supports the upper part of the teeth-bearing bones, and kind of forms a connection between a lot of the other bones in the back of the skull. What's really interesting about the jugal in Fona is that what's really interesting about the jugal in Fona is that the older individuals have this area on the lateral surface, on the exterior surface, that in the older individuals of Fona becomes very swollen, and also develops a very rugose texture. And we don't yet know exactly why they're doing this.
That's great. Just go back to the skull and rotate. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, no, that's not that's why I'm not gonna stay quiet.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you.
With the pen without the logo showing?
While it's frozen?
Well, whatever. Weren't you talking about that bone?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so just freeze it. Oh, 1 second. Wait till Bob starts going, and then take the pen out of frame, and then put it in, and hold it there.
Okay.
Go.
And then take it out. Great. They had a question for you.
Yeah.
One more question.
I was wondering if there's any structural similarities in Fona that you found that might be related to something you find in a chicken or a bird that is similar? Like any bone structures, like how we have the mandible and things like that?
Yeah. Well, Fona and modern birds are very distantly separated in the family of dinosaurs. Chickens come from theropod dinosaurs, like what we were talking about earlier. And modern birds, the skulls are also very, very different than what dinosaur skulls were. So they do a lot of different changes. Bird skulls are often fused and things like that. Let's see if I can think about this question.
So you're saying is there not enough similarity, even merit making a connection then?
I think what the similarities between Fona and modern birds is that the same bones are preserved, so you'll still have the same types of bones, the jaw bones, the dentary, things like a maxilla, and all the individual bones, but they are organized very differently in the skull. Birds often fuse a lot of the bones in the skull into like a big round orb, kind of like what we do with our skulls as humans. Whereas in a lot of dinosaurs, they maintained a lot of separation between certain bones. So there's lots of holes, there's lots of canals, what we call fenestra and things like that, where maybe soft tissue went through or blood vessels went through or there were muscle attachment points. That's more common in dinosaurs, and then in modern bird skulls, they kind of close up a lot of those areas and they fuse them into a solid unit.
And I recall a conversation you had with Emma Kate about finding the bones and discovering what they are as like turkey or chicken and eating them, and like you can determine what they are by their bones. Is there?
Can you repeat that for like, oh, I remember, I know what you're talking about, yeah. Well, that has to do with how we kind of figure out if a dinosaur is a new species. So like I was saying earlier, a lot of times we go out to the field, we excavate these bones, but we don't know if we have a new species all the time, because it might just be that we found new examples of a previously known species, which is still an important discovery because we need new dinosaurs, and sometimes we need to get an idea of what a population or multiple specimens look like in a species. But we don't always know if we have a new species. When we bring it back to the lab and we clean up all those fossils, that's when the hard work starts. That's when we have to identify if there are features on it that are unique. So it would be like going to Thanksgiving dinner and you have a chicken leg in one hand and a turkey leg in the other. When you finish eating them, you'll hold up both of those bones next to each other and you'll compare them. And you'll be able to notice a number of differences, both in the size and the shape and in maybe particular features. And that's essentially what we have to do with dinosaur bones when we think we found a new species. So we have to take those bones and then travel around the country, sometimes around the world, to investigate the dinosaurs that are its closest relatives, and then see if we can find features that are different from the other ones. That's what we did with Fona, and we were able to identify a series of really unique features that show that it is a unique species.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you did talk about, you're pointing out stuff. That was good. You know, when you talk about birds and the jaw. Okay,
I guess,
go ahead.
so if you take, for example, the differences between Fona's skull and the skull of a chicken, for example, there are a number of differences. I think the most striking difference is that Fona has teeth. Most plant-eating dinosaurs do have teeth, and teeth are lost in birds. They get what we call an edentulous beak. But it's also very likely, though, that Fona had something that birds have, is that they probably had a keratinous beak on the top of their nose that probably extended the jaw out quite a bit. Another big difference between Fona's skull and modern birds is the presence of these wide openings. We see that there's a lot of these wide openings, like what we call fenestra, that probably facilitated the passageway of certain muscles and soft tissue and blood vessels and things like that. And these openings get closed in modern birds. So a modern bird skull becomes very fused, kind of like a big solid orb.
It's just to like have that be the end for audio reasons, just have it be the end of the
Right.
clip. So I'll just like, and if you say something, I'm not going to be like, okay, immediately engaging. Like I'm not going to speak until you're finished with your answer, and then I'll ask you something else. So I don't want you to think that I'm like not listening or not caring. Just want to give you a heads up.
Yeah.
So it'll be a little different than just like a regular conversation. But okay. Yeah, that's all.
I'll yell at you if you just say something wrong. Yeah. No, Lisa, that's wrong. I'm the best fake paleontologist there is. Not related to whales in any way.
Oh, and in this interview, if it would actually be preferred if you. Okay. So first, if you would just like to introduce yourself, explain what you do, what your job is here at the museum, that would be great.
Okay, my name's Lisa Herzog, and I am the Paleontology Operations Manager at the museum here, which means I oversee the activities of both this lab and the Dino Lab down on the first floor. And I'm pretty more of a specialist in fossil handling and care. So I oversee everything that is happening with the specimens in order to facilitate research at the museum.
And what's the best part about your job?
Yeah, well, I think the best part about my job is the process of discovery. You know, I really like the concept that we're discovering new things. We are understanding our world better by looking into the past and finding all these really great, interesting new creatures that used to live here.
So what goes into discovering a new dinosaur? What is the process when you get bones back from a dig? Walk me through that process. What happens when they get to this lab?
Sure. So we go out on our expeditions, and whatever we find comes back to the museum. And when they come back to the museum, I'm responsible for unpacking all the specimens and doing an inventory of what we collected and making sure that everything matches up with what is on the logs from the field. And then we kind of take an assessment of what we have found and prioritize specimens that we think may be really interesting. Of course, we're always looking for possible new species. That would always be a high priority specimen, but sometimes we're just trying to fill in some gaps of specimens or species we already know about, but we don't have a whole lot of their skeleton collected already. So once we determine what's most important to prepare, we will assign those specimens to the preparators that work in the lab. We have several paid staff, full-time professional preparators, but we also have some volunteers that work in here. And so we distribute the load because we always collect a lot of things. And then as the preparation progresses and more of the actual bone is uncovered, we have to remove the rock to really see what we have. It gives us a better idea of what we actually have and if it could possibly be a new species.
So, so what is something that would indicate, or what's something that would differentiate species between, like, what is one of the first things that you guys look for when you get a fossil back from the lab? What is, you can get sciencey if you want, still
Get
learning this
sciencey.
term, but is it like the process, where when you count the rings of a tree and that tells you how old it is, like what are you guys actually doing when you're looking at a microscope? What are you looking for?
To identify the bones that we have, looking at what animal it is, because in paleontology all we have are the bones. You can tell a lot just by the fossilized bones. And so we're looking at the actual shape of the bones. How long is it? How wide is it? Is it long and skinny? Is it long and fat? It's like really basic stuff to begin with that helps, each different thing that you can discover about the shape of a bone, or if you have multiple bones from the same animal, it just keeps narrowing down the possibilities of what it could be. And that's the process that we go through of, like if we have teeth, that can be very, very diagnostic. And so we look for the parts of the skeleton that are the most diagnostic, and then we study them. And it can take a long time to determine what it is. So, we'll continue the preparation until we have everything uncovered and we can get a really full picture of what it is. And then, to really be sure about what we're looking at, we have to compare it to other known specimens. And so some of it is looking at what we already have in our collections here, but some of it is visiting other institutions and making comparisons that way. And that's why the process takes so long. I think a lot of people don't realize how long it usually is from, we found this on our expedition to we published the paper. Particularly for Fona, it was at least 10 years of preparation and study and research till it actually was published.
And was there anything on the most recent dig in Utah that pushed the Fona discovery over the edge, or sort of pushed it to actualization? Or would you say that would just truly been the whole 10 years holistically of work that?
Well, I mean, the publication, once you submit a paper for publication, it takes them, the journal, it's like a process of now it's in the journal's hands and it's several months for them. They send it out to review, so they send it to other professional paleontologists to look at it and judge the paper as to whether or not it is well written and that the facts and the hypotheses that are presented in the paper are well supported. Then it comes back to the author, and the author will either have to make corrections. Sometimes things get accepted as is, sometimes things get rejected. Then it comes back to the author to make corrections, and then it goes back, and then it finally gets published. So I think the Fona paper came out in July of this year. They were finished writing and submitting it probably in January or February. I'm not exactly sure when it was submitted, but so anything we did this year in the field had no bearing on it because it was already done and in the bag.
And so referencing earlier when you talked about that a tooth is a very distinctive piece piece of a fossil that gives you a lot of information about a dinosaur. What about a tooth specifically is better than, let's say, a thigh bone or something?
You can tell by the size and shape of the tooth.
Okay.
Teeth they have curvature to them. Theropod teeth, like animals like a tyrannosaur, are very diagnostic because they have curvature. They have little serrations on the edge. They're crocodile teeth are very diagnostic because they're conical, and if you look at plant-eating dinosaurs, their teeth are a lot different. They have different types of ridges on them. It's just something you learn as you go through the process of becoming a paleontologist through coursework and looking at animals.
And what do bones, and can you explain in the in a holistic way, what do bones tell us about the parts of dinosaurs that don't survive? So the hair, the stomach, the muscles. How can you get information about those parts of a dinosaur from just the bones?
The bones, the most diagnostic parts of the bones are where you can look and see where muscle attachments would be. So it tells you like how strong an animal will be, and depending on what parts of their body where they were focusing their musculature can give you an indication of what they were doing with their bodies. A lot of carnivores have really strong jaw muscles. An animal like this might show indications that it was a burrowing animal in the structure of their limb bones. And you can look at the cross-section of their limb bones as well to get some indication of whether or not they were a burrowing animal.
Could you speak a little bit more about burrowing animals specifically, since that's what we have here? Just a general list of what, when you get bones back, what would it be indicative of a burrowing animal like Fona?
That's a really good question. I don't really specialize in that, but I think with Fona, it's the forelimbs, and it can be the way their skulls and their faces are designed. And of course, in paleo, we always look at, the present is a key to the past. And so you can look at modern burrowing animals and see how they're structured and compare it to fossil animals. And when we see fossil animals that are similar, it's a strong indication that that is like a burrowing adaptation of their skeletal structure.
And how often do you run into evolutionary gaps? Do you ever experience fossils coming in where you're saying, we know about what this species was like at this time, but we don't know about the descendants of the species at another time, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happens pretty often, and that's something that is what a paleontologist would target as far as where we dig. So one of the reasons we dig in this area where Fona is from is because it's from a time period that there are a lot of gaps. And so we've been working in the same formation under the direction of Dr. Lindsay Zano, because it's her research program, because she's trying to fill in those gaps of different groups of animals' evolution. She specializes in theropod dinosaurs. And we did find, actually, Lindsay has named 2 different theropod dinosaurs out of this formation. So we are filling in those gaps slowly over time.
Okay, yeah, so because they're not going to hear my questions in the interview.
Oh, right,
if
yeah.
you could repeat when you say that, as in that being, evolutionary gaps, or,
Right,
sort of just
yeah.
repeat what you sort of just said, but sort of give that as a clarifying beginning, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. So answer that same question.
I'll
Okay.
ask
Yeah,
you.
sure. Well, I mean, I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever encounter certain fossils of the same family, but 30, 50 million years gap? What do you do if there's an evolutionary gap? Do you ever run into that when you're discovering fossils? Can you tell if they're from the same family but different time periods, et cetera, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so evolutionary gaps exist in our understanding of animals. There are a lot of evolutionary gaps in, across the board in paleontology. And the way that we target trying to fill in those gaps is to conduct research or conduct expeditions in very specific areas where we know the age of the rock is going to be within that gap period. And so here at the museum, when we go out on expeditions like when we found Fona, it's under the direction of Dr. Lindsay Zano, and she's looking at that specific time period to fill in the gaps there. And she's been very successful. She's named, I know, at least 2 different theropods from the Mustn't Touch It member, the Cedar Mountain Formation, and now we have Fona. Last year, she named Yanni, which is another different type of dinosaur. And so, since we're still finding new stuff, we'll continue to go to that same area.
Those are sort of all the questions that I had. Is there anything else you would like to add in this interview that you feel like you didn't get the chance to say, or is there any general information you'd like to speak on about bones or fossil discovery?
I mean, I'd kind of like to say a little bit about the preparation,
Please.
If you want. So one of the really unique things about Fona is how complete the animal is and how many different representatives we have, like meaning different individual animals. So, that's part of the reason why the publication took so long, or the research took so long, because the fossil preparation takes a very long time. And so one of the specimens we found was like animals that had died probably in a burrow. And it was multiple individuals that kind of died all on top of each other. So it was just this big mishmash hash of bones that needed to be prepared. It took a really long time. And we had one of our skilled preparators here, Aaron Gitterman, who did a lot of the work. And it's just a really long process. But in the end, it gives you a much better picture of that animal because you have so many elements from that one species that you can really define the species by.
What was it like to work with Haviv, if you have any experience of that, and Dr. Lindsay Zano, specifically in relation to Fona and on the dig in Utah?
Oh yeah, well, so I've worked with Lindsay and Haviv for nearly 10 years now. And working with both of them has been really a great experience. I first met Lindsay when we both worked at the Field Museum in Chicago, and then she recruited me to come down here to work for her in her lab. And the field work, we just kind of get in this sync where we kind of have our routines and we know how it works and things run smoothly, which helps everything. It helps us be a lot more productive in general. And Haviv, started volunteering in this lab back when he was still an undergrad, when he was finishing up at Wake Tech. Then he went on to App State, and then he went on to get his PhD, or he's, working on his PhD. And so, he's been around this lab for a very long time as well. So it seems like he's really part of the lab, even though he's kind of been a student the whole time,
And can you speak about the process of, I guess, him being a student working here? Is that normal? Do you have students volunteering working here, or is it sort of uncommon to see a PhD student or an undergraduate working in a lab?
This lab kind of functions on its, let me start that again. So this lab kind of functions on a lot of graduate student work and undergraduates. So Dr. Lindsay Zano, again, she has a joint appointment with North Carolina State University, and she has, she's an advisor to several PhD and master's students. And so that kind of drives a lot of what we do in here, because each of those students have their own project that they're working on for their degrees. And so it keeps this lab really busy. It's very active. There's a lot of really cool things happening in here. The diversity of methods we use and different ways that we're looking at these dinosaurs and animals from the past is really pretty unique as far as a paleo lab goes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Go. A little bit further down.
Down this way.
Oh, this way.
There you
Okay.
go. Do it one more. Good. Take it away. Good, 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 good. Just let's just roll for it. Okay, where did you want to go ahead and explain it?
Okay. So this is a composite of a bunch of different hip elements. And so the hip is comprised of 3 different bones. You have the ilium, which is real long here, and this here is where the hip, or the femur would go into the socket here. And then there's an ilium and an ischium. And, you know, these were all found on top of each other, and we had to separate them out. But you know, the way you know that there's more than one individual is that there's multiple of the same bones, because, you know, every animal is mirrored on both sides, but you only have one right leg, you only have one ilium. And so in here, there's an ilium on each side. And in here we have 4 iliums, which I'm not sure if they're left or right, but it definitely indicates there's more than one individual there. And so that's how we kind of determined how many different individuals there were in that massive pile of bone that we prepared.
And can you speak a little bit about finding bones intact, or is it common to find, you know, like large bones like that, or what do you do if they're fractured? You know, like, is this a normal
Right.
condition?
It's really uncommon to find bones in such good condition, particularly in this formation that we are finding stuff in. It's called the Mustn't Touch It member of the Cedar Mountain Formation. And a big reason why it had been poorly sampled prior to Dr. Zano working out there is because there's a lot of bone out there, but it's really fragmentary and not very complete, and you really, really have to look hard and dig a lot to find good material. And, you know, she came in and had the patience to do that, to go out multiple years in a row and dig really big holes to find the actual good material. And so finding something like this and finding this many all in one area, particularly in the Mustn't Touch It, is extremely uncommon.
Can you show us a femur, the best representation?
No, there's not a femur. There's not a femur in here. This is an ilium.
Is there a modern term for that? Like a hip?
Yeah, it's your part of your pelvis. So the humans are like fused together. They don't have separate bones. But in dinosaurs, what is that beeping noise?
I think it's this battery, Bob.
Oh, battery. Your
Like
battery.
better?
It says BT.
Right. Here we go. And action.
So this is a drawer of all the hip elements that we have from Fona, from the specimen that was found in a burrow. And there's multiple individuals in here. And each hip is composed of 3 elements, and there's a left and a right, so there's 6. And one of them is the ilium. So this is the ilium here.
Hold it right there.
It's
Hold
an
it right
important part of the skeleton.
Set it back down and pull it right into there where you just had it. Ready? And start talking about it. And
Okay.
go.
So this here is the ilium, and this is an important part of the skeleton. And here, where this rounded curve is, this would make a socket, and that's where the femur would fit into the skeleton.
You would do that one more time, please. Just set it down and bring it back into where it was and go.
Okay. So this right here is an ilium, and that's part of the pelvic structure. And the ilium, this is the top of the ilium, and down here on the bottom where this round part is where the femoral head would fit into the hip area.
Put it down.
Can you call it a leg? Can we call the femur part of the leg?
The leg bone,
Yep.
the top of the leg bone.
Yeah, if you want to do one
Sure.
more time and call it top
Yeah.
of the leg bone.
You gonna do it again?
Okay, you
Pull-
ready?
Pull it up.
Okay.
I gotta focus. Just pull it out. Let me look at it real quick. Thank you. Okay, you can set it back down and pull it in that position and
Okay.
go.
So for instance, this bone here is called the ilium. It's part of the pelvis of the animal. And the ilium is where the top of the leg bone, the femur, would fit in here. It's like a ball and socket joint.
Okay, set it down.
Lovely.
Any other questions?
And were you on this gig in Utah as well? You were.
Yeah, so I found this fascinating.
Oh, is that right?
So I discovered it one year. It was kind of towards the end of the time we were out there. So I was walking back from a different site and I found some bone that had just barely started to grow out. So I started digging in the hill and it kind of seemed like maybe there was something more there. And it wasn't. It was. And I was about to give up until I, like, my last survey permits where you can go disturb the surface for a little bit, but if you want to actually open a door and like dig a big hole, you need to. And so that's how.
Could you brush just a little bit more?
A little bit more.
Thank you.
So just describe to us what we're seeing here, and the significance of finding this fossil, hole like this.
Okay, so this is another example of Fona. This is a partially articulated, meaning it died in position and was fossilized in its original state, and it's part of the body. So here, this is one arm and another arm over here.
Stop. Lisa, like, kind of point it with your hand like you did with your right hand. Go ahead.
Okay. You want me to talk now? Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
Go ahead and point to it again. Good. Okay. Now what area? And go ahead and explain it. Go.
Okay, so right here is one of its arms. Its other arm is on this side, and right down the middle we can see its vertebral column. Some ribs are here, and then right here is one of its hind feet. This is the lower leg right here, and then it curves around into the foot, which is kind of curled up like a claw almost. It died in that position.
Is there anything else?
And about more about it, can you just speak about
the difference in finding it partially articulated or
Right.
finding them, you know, in parts, or like speak a bit
Sure.
about that.
So when we did the fossil preparation on this specimen, we left a lot of the rock in place so that it would
Start that
stay in
again.
its.
Stop, sorry. Start that again. And
Yeah.
go.
Is that gonna be a problem?
No.
So when we did the fossil preparation on this specimen,
I was talking. I apologize. And go.
So when we did the fossil preparation on this particular specimen, we left a lot of the original rock in place because we wanted to keep it in its original position. We didn't want to separate the bones, so we could see exactly what position it was in when it died.
Is it assumed that the burrow collapsed on this? Do you have any information about?
I
what-
don't know. Yeah.
what,
This one, I really don't
Hand us
know.
over a lot.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Um,
Yeah, this one I
what-
don't know. It's possible that it died in a burrow. So I don't know. You don't want to quote me on it
Can you
because
give
I'm not
us
the
any
one that did the
information
research on it.
about What are things that would cause a fossil to be discovered altogether versus it being
Oh, sure.
broken up, yeah, or fragmented?
Yeah, usually when we find a specimen that is,
Let's start again. I'm just
Okay.
gonna- I need to see you since you're just.
Okay.
talking about that. Sorry. Okay.
okay? So usually when we find specimens that are still intact like this, it's an indication that there is rapid burial because when an animal dies, there's a lot of scavenging going on with it and their bones can get separated before they become fossils. When we find them like this, it's an indication that it died and was buried very rapidly, either by dying in a burrow and the burrow collapsed on it, or by it being rapidly covered by sediment from some sort of a flooding event or some kind of wash happening or sediment falling on top of it.
Let's cut.
Perfect.
Give a roll, single start, just the very beginning.
Just explain to us what makes a fossil be found in this partially articulated position versus being a fragmented one.
So a specimen like this one here that was preserved partially intact is an indication that there was rapid burial. When after it died, it got buried rapidly, so there wasn't time for scavengers to come in and pull it apart and separate the bones.
And what processes, could you give an example of something that would cause for a rapid burial, for example?
Rapid burial, okay. Yeah, rapid burial can happen for a number of reasons. Sometimes there's a flooding event. If it's near the shoreline of a river, it can get buried rapidly. An animal like this, which we think was a burrowing animal, could have died in a burrow and the burrow collapsed in on it. Trail off.
Point to the upper arm, please. That's great. And point to the lower arm.
Got a little bit of a hand in there even. This is just a little bit of its hand.
That's great. Right.
Vertebra.
Yeah. Point it out to me. Touch or get near. There you go. That's what I need to see. Take your hand away and point it out.
And then we have the,
Then, yeah. And point that out.
this is the back leg. And then this is its foot here.
Point to the foot again if you want.
This is the
Just the-
foot in a grasping position.
Uh,
Toes are all curled up.
Get one continuous audio from top to bottom, both body, like in 15-second span or something.
We did, but let's do it again.
Okay.
Because now I've got a better feel for how you're just moving along.
Okay.
So I won't shoot real tight on this shoot. Super tight. And you'll start at the arms, obviously. Okay, and go.
So this is another specimen of Fona that was preserved partially intact. Starting on this end, we have some of its neck right here, leading into two of its arms. This is one arm, other arm. And then you can see right down the middle, its vertebral column. There's some ribs here. And then its back foot is curled up back here. This is the hind limb, the hind leg, and then this is part of the foot right here.
So you did that in about 27 seconds. Do you think it can go from top to bottom in half the time?
Probably.
Okay, so just wait till Bob's ready. If you could
Pressure's on.
Ready, set, go.
If you could shoot for about 15,
Yeah.
14 seconds, top to bottom. You don't have to go in great detail, but if you just hit
Mhm.
all the key anatomical parts
Okay,
in common language.
Here we go.
ready?
Go.
Okay, so this is another specimen of Fona that was preserved partially intact. Starting on this end, we have its neck, arms, we have its vertebral column here, and then ending here with part of its back limb. This is part of its leg, and here's its foot.
Yep.
Did you say claws at the end?
No,
Oh, it's feet. You said feet?
I said foot, yes.
Okay, but, great. That was 50.
And you don't, we're no
Just
longer
act
here.
normal,
You're
or-
no
oh,
longer
okay.
here, you just do your thing.
If it was
Like you have it there would be great if you could stay on that one. But lower it just a little bit if you could. Lower it down if you could. The whole thing. On an angle. Yeah. Can you do that?
sure.
Yeah, I still can't see. Okay.
of the paleontologists PD also here. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Yeah, this whole thing is awesome. I'm sure you're back. Hey, we're all done. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. At least you got your show going. It's just something in the background. Even though I'm not looking at it, it's like TV on at the house. I was thinking it was yeah. It's like, and every now and then something catches your attention. What? I don't think I'd be able to watch the show because the whole time I was like, this is later for next action finish. So y'all done with me? Yeah, I think we're all set. We're about to talk about everything else. Thank you so much. You're welcome. No, because I was trying to wait for any more visitors to come by because I was actually sawing this piece off for a shot. But we kind of don't do when visitors are in here because they can't hear us. So in between, some people might be able to get a little thing done and snatched off. You know, I was sawing and you guys are coming. And then I looked again and we were pulling there. I'm like, damn, that would have been a good show. And it's thick. Were when we seen on a magazine or on TV or a commercial. We're like, that would have been nice to know where this is coming from. And then when I'm with my family, just because they can't like hear us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll see you in the
I have to follow you.
See, my bun doesn't have any bones at all. Gracie. Oh. Hello.
Let's take this out.
This is where the spinal cord would have gone. Ooh.
Can't get up there.
I must have this embedded tooth.
But did he pull a baddie?
Protect from environment or from predators?
From
Let's look at something else.
Look at here, there's fish. Fish. So please touch. This means please touch. Yeah. So you're looking at 3 different scenarios, Bella. So one is duel, one is dinner, one is disaster. Disaster means so they actually don't know each other, and there's a disaster kind of burn them together. Sorry.
This is like the Mortal Kombat selections, right?
Would you mind doing that one more time for me?
Yes, sir.
See, everything that's new these days is yeah, superheroes, Spider-Man, Batman.
That's our language. Don't speak on that.
Well, oh, superheroes?
Oh yeah.
I've definitely been doing that longer than you. I've definitely been doing that longer than you've been on.
I've been reading some of the original X-Men from when it started up on. So
1963.
yeah. I'm in the 90s now.
The 90s was a rough time for the X-Men.
Yeah.
Like they had lots of
75 on was like a golden age though.
75.
Yeah.
Once you get an X-Force, X-Factor.
It's a bit messy. But what's his face? Hickman's sort of like overhaul of it. I've been enjoying that so far.
Process of developing a hypothesis, then examining different parts of the process to test whether that hypothesis will be correct. Sometimes the evidence supports those ideas, and they become our current best answers. Other times, those ideas are proven wrong, or bring up even more questions, and we go right back to the beginning. For example, our paleontologists already know that this is a tyrannosaur. But they don't know what species of tyrannosaur the skeleton belonged to. After all, it does look different from the tyrannosaurs you may be familiar with. Scientists have been debating for a long time about small, slender tyrannosaurs like this one. Could it be a juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex? Or does it belong to...
You should learn how to play the guitar, Triceratops.
What, press the lizard?
Fire ski. It's kind of like your mama.
Hey. Can I push this one?
Oh my god, it's a
Hope your Triceratops disguise itself. He needs one of those glasses with the mustache.
Zebra. Oh, I see a bird. Which one? Pick one. Tiger?
You want a tiger, huh?
There's a monster embedded.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Say hi.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, hi. Hello.
All right, action. Kind of look at the fossils. Yeah,
Okay, and action.
This is something that can happen to dinosaurs when they are from soft tissues to the box, which they may look like milk. These things take some pictures. Surface texture of the bones, especially the surface, it is gnarled and rough. This is something that can happen to these extinct species. From soft tissues to surface fossil, we know that it's exciting. This is only one possibility though. There are many Triceratops that was already determined. Or maybe hope to come back and visit us again. Make sure to check us out at dinosaurs.org and follow us on social media for updates. Who knows?
We'd like to invite you to step into the SECU Dino Lab. Just ahead, you'll find our team of scientists working with the actual human dinosaur fossil. Thank you for joining us today. Stir up many questions about your bones, seemingly looking back.
How why the living dinosaurs are so special and how the examples were found in the ground. This fossil features
Turn your head toward me a little bit more.
discovery is so in examining different test why hypothesis are sometimes the evidence supports ideas may become our current best answers. Early scientists and biologists are looking at these evidence. Determining as we triceratops, we think
Okay, so spine, mud back. Let's focus on face and head. Which type of animal do your triceratops resemble? Lizard, bird, or fish? Okay. Which fish would your triceratops? Spotted wrasse. Oh, look at that one. By color.
This one looks more like a fish.
Okay. Did you do the same as fighting fish? I did. Sperm. Is that the selection you wanted?
Oh.
Have you seen the dueling dinosaur?
So, exhibit stuff, because I'd love to have some paleontologists.
This is a scaled down replica of the dueling dinosaurs as they were found inside the lab. They're tackling important questions about this dinosaur duo. What species were they? What did they look like in life? How old were they when they died? Correct. Sometimes the evidence supports those ideas or bring up even more questions and we go right back to the beginning. For example, our paleontologists already know that this is a tyrannosaur, but they don't know what species of tyrannosaur the skeleton belonged to. After all, it does look different than the tyrannosaurs for the bones, especially the skull. It is gnarled and rough. This is something that can happen to dinosaurs when they are old or diseased. The dueling dinosaurs provide other glimpses into the lives of these extinct creatures. From soft tissues preserved with the fossil, we can get an idea of what they may have looked like in life. This comes from things like skin impressions that we found from both legs, some to suggest that these two animals may have fought to the death. There are many other options for what may have happened that day in the late Cretaceous. Maybe the smaller tyrannosaurs. The rock around this fossil shows that they were buried in a flood event, which may have swept their bodies together in a crowd. There's still a lot of mystery about our fossil and the ancient animals they represent. What you've seen here is scratches and surface of what we have to learn about the dinosaurs. We hope you enjoyed this preview of dinosaurs and follow us on social media for updates. Who knows? Maybe.
Shot here. All right, you got your shot. You got a good shot there, huh?
Just watch what he's doing.
You all been to the other?
Okay, that's okay.
No, not with food. I'm not.
You work in there.
Where do you go?
No,
I did see you come in, but I won't use that shot.
Okay, thank you. These two were not interacting at all. The rock around this fossil shows that they were buried in a flood event, which may have swept their bodies together after they died. To answer these questions, our scientists will look at a variety of Tyrannosaur. There's still a lot of mysteries about our fossil pair and the ancient animals they represent. What may have happened that day in the Lake Cretaceous? Maybe the smaller Tyrannosaur was scavenging on Triceratops. The fossil shows that they were buried in a flood event, which may have swept their bodies together.
Actually, this is the closest sheep that we're shooting for
About our fossil pairs and the ancient animals they represent. What you see here only scratches the surface of what we hope to learn about the older dinosaurs. We hope you enjoyed this preview of our process and hope you come back and visit us again. Make sure to check us out at duelingdinosaurs.com.
Your task is to find the dinosaur's inner ear. Where do you think its ear is, Kelsey? Right there. Awesome, you made it. Okay, ready? Look at this. Its ears. Live through it for them. Mom, when are we going to be able to use his name? Hey, can I see what we're looking here? I'm going to push it back that way. She can't hear turtles. She can't hear ducks or frogs, snakes or birds. She could hear Triceratops though.
Look at that. Do you see that? Spin him around.
We might be. What are y'all checking out over here?
Dinosaurs are multifaceted. They're alive today and ask a lot of questions and observe how birds and crocodiles live today. So maybe answering questions about dinosaurs. So always stay curious. And then, try to at university. I knew what I wanted to do, so I set out to become a manager. So I took a lot of biology classes, a lot of geology classes. Then I got involved with the campus museum. And I volunteered for a long time. First thing I would say, read as much as you can. Always be curious about everything, not just about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs
These speakers will help your Triceratops discourage or confuse predators. Broke pouch. Okay, give me your shoes, Eliza. Choose a different one.
Get some good shots.
Good.
Each zone gets some really good ones. So we've got 3 cameras going, video. We're going to get the only thing that I'm missing right now is kind of a wide shot in here.
Okay.
So I'm set up for a wide shot, and we're just going to get another 10
Just
people
like you
in
want to
here.
make? Great. So yes or no? Okay. This helps your Triceratops track to mate. Get the background. All right, which one of these?
Are you just like Instagram?
Tiger. How's that look?
Okay.
I forgot for a second. 24.
I'm in front shot.
How old did you think I was? All right, look, there's your Triceratops.
Then examining different parts of the body to test whether our hypothesis can be correct. Sometimes the evidence supports those ideas may become our current best answers. Other times, those ideas are proven wrong or bring up even more questions, and we go, for example.
You're not going to remember this at all.
These fossils are all from Montana. This fossil is from North Carolina.
That's as far as it opens.
How are you, sir? Welcome to the space. Welcome to the Dino Lab. We have various things for people to touch. So pieces of dinosaur, some skin impressions, image of skin impression.
Do you feel something? Yeah. Smooth,
It's kind of smooth. There's not much relief to that.
Still something you feel.
Still
Yeah.
something. Triceratops. Just touch the horn from the Triceratops. You're good. You're good. This is a vertebrae. You know where your vertebrae are?
Where's your vertebrae?
They're in your back.
Your back?
Up your back.
Right there?
So this one's to a duck-billed dinosaur.
Oh.
And this channel is right where the spinal cord would go. Yeah. This one, what does this look like? So this is a fossil poop. This is called a coprolite. She's not enthralled. She's like, what? So this fossil is from North Carolina. 75 million years old.
Wow, baby, that's older than I am.
Yeah. So probably from a crocodile or a turtle. Fossil poop.
Fossil poop.
Yeah.
could you explain what's behind you real quick and the significance of it to you?
Well, behind me right here is our paleo field shed. And so this is where we store all of our gear that we take out to the field with us. And we pack it up into the trailer that's also right there. And then we hook that trailer up to our truck and we drive it out. And it does a big loop around the country depending on which field sites we have. And then we bring all those fossils back with us. So in the field shed right there, there's different equipment like our saws and our sleeping bags, our tents, and our plaster cement, shovels, picks, things like that.
What is that journey like to get out there?
All right. The drive out is the, what do you think? So the journey out to the west is fun. It's really nice at the beginning when you're clean because everything still smells nice and you're so excited to get out and see the outcrop and see the landscape and start camping. By the end, the drive home, that can be kind of grueling because you're so dirty, you're just ready to take a shower, get home. But it's fun, you know, it typically takes like 2 days to get out to the field to drive out. So we stop a lot of time and get a hotel, have some dinner, and then we just keep driving. So it can be like 9 hours of driving.
Nice. And kind of changing directions, what led you to name this new fossil Fona Herzogii?
Yeah. Well, once I found out that Fona was a new dinosaur, we realized that we could give it a name. So I spent a long time kind of brainstorming some ideas. And I realized pretty quickly on that I wanted the first part of the name, right? Because dinosaurs get 2 names, a genus and a species name. So I wanted the genus name to reflect some aspect of indigenous mythology. And I decided that I would start with my own indigenous culture from my mom's side, which is the Chamorro people from the island of Guam, which is in the Pacific. So I did some research and tried to investigate what would be some cool aspects. But I ultimately ended up realizing that I can't just pull stuff out of Wikipedia or look for things online. I needed to go to the source. I needed to make some connections. So I sent some emails out to indigenous cultural leaders in Guam and Hawaii and the Pacific Islands. And we ended up having a big Zoom meeting together where we spent about an hour just talking story, going over some ideas. I actually realized that the first name that I had considered probably wasn't a good choice because it was probably a mythology that was introduced post-colonialism. So we dove into the pre-colonial mythology and ended up finding this beautiful creation story about a brother and sister spirit named Fona and Pontan, who together created aspects of the universe and the island. And then when Pontan died, he gave up his spirit, and Fona, the sister, used her powers to create the parts of the earth. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the second half of the name is named after Lisa Herzog, which is our operations manager in the Paleo Lab at the North Carolina Science Museum. Now, Lisa is a dear friend of mine. She's one of my oldest mentors. She's been working, I started working with her in 2014 in the field, where it was my first year out in the field, and she taught me everything I know about how to dig up a dinosaur and how to protect it and how to work on it once we get back to the laboratory. So she's a dear friend of mine, and she's been such a colossal help for the entire process of naming Fona and finding and discovering Fona. She actually found one of the most spectacular sites where Fona is preserved, the one that has multiple individuals and a baby in them. She found that site, so we wanted to honor her by giving her the name.
Yeah. Why did you specifically get to name a dinosaur?
Why did I get to name Fona? I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have done so. It's kind of complicated, but when in paleontology, a lot of times when you are a graduate student, you kind of get the autonomy to craft your project yourself how you want and decide what direction do you want to take your project. I knew from the get-go that I wanted my project to focus on foundational paleontology. I knew that I wanted my project to focus on foundational paleontology. So things like studying the anatomy of the bones, being able to interact directly with the specimens and do kind of the taxonomic assessment of, is this a new dinosaur or is it a different individual from an already known dinosaur? So through that process, when I did discover that Fona was new, since it was the project that I had, that I was working on, my advisor was gracious enough to allow me to give the name to Fona. I mean, a lot of times it's about the amount of work someone does, or, you know, these things can kind of become nebulous in the field. It's not always that way in other labs. Maybe, you know, it's different stories and things like that, but Lindsay was gracious to give me the ability to choose the name. But we worked together. Also, you know, me and Lindsay worked together to kind of craft the name up. So I proposed some ideas. I suggested Fona as a name, she loved it, and then we worked together to think about how we wanted to choose the other second half of the name. She proposed, hey, maybe we should honor Lisa, and I thought, when I heard that, I was like, absolutely, let's go for it, because that would be perfect, so.
It sounds perfect too, it just sounds like very natural as somebody who isn't in paleontology like Herzog. I was like, oh, I wonder if that means, you know, something about the dinosaur specifically, but kind of switching directions again, how has this discovery affected you personally?
Ooh, it's a loaded question. How has it affected me personally? Well, it's been the foundation of my professional career, right? I'm at the beginning of my professional career as a paleontologist, so it's an incredible foundation to kind of have and to have a stepping stone for my reputation in the field. It's been an absolute joy to work on, so it's really wonderful to have a project that has so many different aspects to kind of satisfy my creative mind and my desire for novelty and things like that. And it's allowed me to make a lot of wonderful connections with people all across the globe, both professionally and publicly, like what I'm doing right now with you guys, but also I've been able to travel the country and meet other paleontologists in different museums because I have to go there to see some of the skeletal comparative material. So it's been fantastic like that. I love making new friends, and it's allowed me to do that. And it's also just a wonderful joy to be able to work on things that like lived millions of years ago and that were really critical and important aspects of their ecosystems. You know, like Fona is so, oh, I've been talking a while, so let me just stop there. Yeah, I tend to meander and ramble, so kind of tangential, but
no,
yeah,
good.
I'll just end it there. Yeah.
Connecting back to Fona, I know this has been years and years of finding fossils and all of that, but was there one specific aha moment that you can remember that you can kind of take us back to where you knew this was going to be a big discovery or something different?
Give me a second. I think the aha moment was probably when we discovered the jugal, which is what I was talking about a little bit yesterday. When we found that jugal, I think I realized that Fona is not an orodromine, that it's probably a thescelosaur. These are two groups of small-bodied plant-eating dinosaurs that are kind of like, you can imagine the differences between a mule deer and a white-tailed deer. They're two families of dinosaurs. Originally, we suspected that Fona was going to be an orodromine. When we found that jugal and when I did some statistical analyses, there was another aha moment where I did all the statistical analyses and I got to the very end and I went click to view the phylogeny, the spreadsheet, like the visual display of the family tree, And it was at that moment I saw Fona was no longer placed in Orodromines. It was right there above Thescelosaurus in the Thescelosaurian clade. For me, that was a really aha moment. It was that moment of like visually seeing. I spent months collecting this data, processing it, verifying that it's true, and all that to culminate in a successful statistical analysis. So.
Would you explain that to Emma and not use the scientific names and do it in really plain English?
Okay. Yeah.
And talk about trees, not phylogeny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me think about how to kind of construct that.
You're good.
Might need to rewind then a bit and start with saying, the way that we figure out the family trees of how dinosaurs are related to each other is we use statistics. And it's kind of like the world's biggest Harry Potter sorting hat, where we do like these really big surveys to say, does it have this feature, yes and no? But we do that across 500 different features for 80 different animals. And so this is what I did with Fona, where I had to do this survey for all these different features to see, is it have this or if it has this? And at the very end, we run that through the statistical analysis. And at the end of it, it gives us the best hypothesis for how those animals are all related to each other. And that was the moment that I realized, I had that aha moment where I realized, wow, Fona is not in this one group of dinosaurs that we originally thought it was, but it's actually in another one that makes more sense actually for it being in, which is what we call the Thescelosaurian family.
And you mentioned the Thescelosaurian, which is willow, that's also in the museum. And I think we touched on this earlier, but could you kind of just in a few short sentences explain that connection between willow, the Thescelosaurus, and Fona? Yeah.
Willow is a really cool dinosaur, and it's also really weird. So willow is the colloquial term, or it's just the name for this specimen of Thescelosaurus neglectus, which is a species of dinosaur that we've known about for about 100 years. But it's a really weird dinosaur where in the geological record, it seems to just pop out of nowhere. It seems to have just popped out of nowhere at the very end of the Cretaceous. And we don't really have a good idea, and we didn't really have a good idea of how it evolved to that point. We didn't see representatives of it in maybe the mid-Cretaceous or in the Jurassic. And so when we realized that Fona was its earliest ancestor, or when we realized that Fona was its closest ancestor and really closely related, it kind of bridges the gap between it bridges the gap in our understanding of how these animals evolved across millions of years. And yeah, I don't know if I explained that well. Sorry. Yeah.
Would you repeat that last part again, Tim?
Oh, you can just continue from.
I'll just do the Zoom meeting. Yeah.
No, we got the Zoom meeting.
Oh.
Just ask him to tell us about what Fona did.
Oh, actually, this is a good connection. In the paper talking about like how she fossilized herself.
Mm-hmm.
So could you begin from there?
Yeah, I thought it was a cool connection between Fona the legend and Fona the dinosaur, because Fona the legend, she becomes petrified. Her body becomes petrified, and she becomes part of the island. And from her body springs forth new life. This is similar to what we kind of see in Fona the dinosaur, where you have this potential family of dinosaurs living together, and there is juvenile material, which represents new life, and they too are fossilized within the earth, just like Fona the legend.
Awesome. That's such a cool connection. And then could you explain the second half of the name?
Yeah, the second part of so the full name of Fona is Fona herzage. And so the second part, herzage, we decided to name after our lab manager at the North Carolina Museum of Natural, to name after our lab manager in the Paleo Lab at the North Carolina Science Museum. And so it's named after Lisa Herzog, who is our operations manager. And Lisa has been part of our team since I started. So she's one of my oldest professional mentors, a dear ally to me, and a dear friend to me. And, oh, sorry.
All right, just kind of wrapping up, going back to naming in your, going back to being able to name it and connecting to your Chamorro ancestry. What does that mean to you specifically? You're connecting back to that.
Mm-hmm. I think, well, it definitely means a lot to be able to connect back to my Chamorro ancestry and to kind of form these connections with other Chamorro people because, you know, for a long part of my life, I've kind of felt disconnected from maybe my cultural backgrounds because I'm part of the Chamorro diaspora. That's a group of, large group of Chamorro people that ended up leaving the island in the last century and usually setting up base in places like San Diego on the West Coast. And so there's always been a part of me that's longed to reconnect with those close familial ties and kind of be absorbed in the culture. And it was just so fantastic to have the opportunity to kind of talk to these people who are actually on the island and kind of get reacquainted with those things, even some of like the aspects of the language, things like that. I don't, yeah, I'm thinking about this question a little bit because it's deep. It's deep, yeah, so. I mean, I would say it meant a lot to me. That I really wanted to honor the people on the island that I've been able to visit once in my life. I've been to Guam once for my grandpa when my grandpa died for his funeral. And during that week there, I had an absolute blast, and it felt like I was connecting with a part of myself that I never knew I was missing. And so being able to kind of give something back to the island, to give them the honor of a dinosaur named after an aspect of our culture. Because this is actually not just the first time a dinosaur has been named after Chamorro mythology. It's actually the first time a dinosaur has been named after any aspect of Pacific Island culture.
Yeah, that was awesome. Okay, could you start back, I guess, with the Zoom meeting?
So we had this Zoom meeting, and we spent about an hour talking story and just chatting about like the aspects of the ancestral mythology. I actually ended up realizing that the first name that I had considered giving to Fona probably wasn't a good idea because it seemed like it was an introduced post-colonial mythology. So we dove into the pre-colonial mythology and ended up finding out about the story about a brother and sister spirit named Fona and Pontan who discovered the island, and when Pontan died, Fona used her powers to create aspects of the universe and the land, the sea, the sky from the parts of her body, from the parts of Pontan's body. And then after this, Fona, in the mythology, in the legend, she fossilized her body into the island, and she became an area called Fuha Rock, which is a giant spire on Guam. And then in the mythology, it says that from her body came forth new life, which was the Chamorro people. So I thought that this was a really cool symbolic connection between Fona, the legend, and Fona, the dinosaur, which is that, oh, sorry.
So just sort of explain to us what some of these tools are and what their use is in the field.
Yeah, well, this is our paleo fuel shed, so this is where we have all of our important gear for the field. So let's start with this tool bag. So one of the important things is when we're in the field, everybody gets a bag of small tools to carry around with them wherever they go. So what's in here is a few things like safety goggles, and then a progression of different kind of tools that we usually use during the coring process. So this is one of the main ones right here. And we usually take this And when we're in the quarry, then we use it to kind of chisel away at the rock. Okay, and then there's some other things in here, right? Like this is one of the most important tools of the profession. This is what allows us to keep our quarries clean and the area that we're working really clean. And then it also kind of scaled down to using really fine tools. So things like this, where if you actually find a fossil, you need to really carefully, delicately work around it. And so some of these really small, like dental picks almost, are used for that. And then what else do we have in here? Sharpies, these are really important. When we make a jacket or when we collect a fossil, the most important thing in science is keeping track of what you've labeled so you don't lose data. So all through the process, what we're doing is we're labeling things and we're keeping track of what goes where and what fossil is what. So that's really important for that. And then the only other thing in here is maybe a pipette, right? We use certain kinds of glues and consolidants in the field to protect the fossils when we first excavate them, and so this allows us to put that there. Yeah, there's some other things in there. This is a whisk broom, so when we need to remove an extensive amount of rock out of the way, but we don't really want to bring in a shovel because it may be too close to the bone, we usually use a whisk broom to kind of clear out our working area. So it's kind of just like the idea of like, you know, the key takeaway is that almost all these tools have iterations of themselves that go from really small to really big. And we employ those tools at different points in the quarrying process when it's appropriate. So when we start off a quarry, we're using really big tools like this pickaxe here, right? So that's like the first tool we start using right at the very beginning, along with a shovel to remove the overburden. That's at a point when we're maybe 4 or 5 or 6 feet above the rock layer. It can even be higher. Sometimes we need something even bigger than this, which is like jackhammers and rock saws. After we're done with this and we're about a meter or a few feet above the bone layer, we switch to using smaller tools. So we have hammers that are like this, but they have a pick going off at the end, and we'll switch to that. And then when we get really close to the bone layer, that's when we start doing the fine tools like that. Yeah. And then this right here, sometimes we employ this. We don't always use it, but this is really important for when we're dealing with microsites, so microfossils. This right here is a screen, right? So it has little tiny apertures where if we're working at a site that has small isolated elements or small isolated bones, things like individual teeth or scales or turtle shells, we put all that dirt in there and then we screen it out, and what's left a lot of times is just the fossils. So we sometimes will use that. And then there's things like this, right? So a lot of times we're digging and we scoop the rocks into the shovel. So it's a lot of times, honestly, it's a lot like gardening. I mean, a lot of times I tell people if they're about to come out to the field for the first time and they want to do something that kind of prepares them for the field, there's 2 really good things to do: hot yoga and gardening. Those are like key skill sets for field work. Yeah. Here's another thing.
Can you explain why hot yoga?
Yeah. I think hot yoga is really good because it's the conditions that you experience in hot yoga a lot of the time are the same conditions that you'll experience in a quarry. It's hot outside. There's not really a good way to cool off. Sometimes it can be really humid. And mainly, you're putting your body in all kinds of weird positions. It's not like a quarry is built as a perfect couch, right? A lot of times you're laying down on rocks. You have to kind of put a leg up here and leverage yourself. You kind of have to sit in weird, awkward positions. So being flexible is really important. And a lot of times you have to really lean over close where you're only like a few inches away from the bone. So it can be kind of a contortionist effort. So that's where hot yoga is really good. Yeah.
Great. I'm good if anyone else has any other questions.
No, there's one famous scene where this Dustin Hoffman's actor is going to
Okay, let's do this little a second. Hang on, that into frame. You can have that where it is, but
And
bring
then
that one into
after
frame.
Oh, okay.
Stefan and
Yeah,
he
right there. Ready?
He threw
Go.
it behind him
Oh.
with the dustpan. Yeah.
Give me one more.
And look at what you're doing rather than at Bob or me.
Okay.
Go. Put it down. Good.
Sure.
Let's bring it in and spin.
Okay.
Go. And leave it there once you do
Oh,
it.
okay.
I'll tell you to drop
But
it.
look this way when you spin.
Okay.
Go. Give me one more. That was a little high. Ready? Go. Give me one more. Not quite as high. Go. Take it away. Good.
Am I looking at the camera? Wait, are my eyes in there?
Yeah, perfect.
Lower it down just a teeny bit. There you go. Perfect.
Do we want to have him bring it into
Yeah, I was
frame?
going to bring. Just drop straight down. Keep going, and bring it in frame now. Not too high. Come down. Here we go.
But is his face in the picture?
No.
Okay. Because he'd be looking at the.
You can bring it in quicker.
Okay.
What he did was last time when he picked it up, he
A
swirled
bit too high. I'm trying to get it
Okay.
Yeah.
close up. Go.
I have a
Put it in.
Oh.
Good.
Wait, don't put it down yet. Show that to Aviv. What if we just want to use it as B-roll? We don't want him talking. Right.
Correct.
So,
So we use the audio, obviously, from the watch.
Pardon?
We use the audio from the watch shot, obviously, and just do close-ups like we always do.
Okay.
These are going to be quick.
I also feel like this is gonna be like a tiny part of the
didn't have the right tool.
Yeah, I can get in there.
You can just clear that out. I'll get back to cooking. I think this is okay, Ian.
What? That's the solution. That'll be cooler than ever.
Okay.
Wrong side?
What?
Wrong side?
No, I'll do it.
Nice job.
Thank you.
You want some of this dug out, Paul?
Yeah, I was just thinking.
What, the
that.
dirt?
Pile you-
Yeah, leave it. I mean, I'm not going down there. I'm just going this way.
Okay.
Unless you're dying to shovel.
Not really.
Got enough shoveling going on over here, I think.
It's not the end of the green.
Yeah.
Poke around on this side of the front.
This side?
Yeah, right in there.
Sure.
Run.
Yeah, I did.
Oh yeah, 12:30. Lunchtime.
Yeah, I was just about to start chiseling right under there.
Cold trowel.
I think I should just fucking do it.
Just what? Go around the back a little bit more.
Okay.
What was that?
Or maybe children working with
I
them.
think it was just up and do it. I'm pretty sure that's what I heard.
Yeah, that was
Up
what
and
we
do it,
said.
man.
Also.
Stiff in my watch.
Is your brain still boiled?
It's getting there. Oh, after shoveling in the sun, once your body heats up, it's really hard to cool it off again.
It goes the same way for once you get cold, it's hard to warm up again too.
Is that true?
Yeah, my bad.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, nice. You can clean that Morrison off.
Can I pick it up? And stuff?
First, just brush it down and try and take some of that Morrison mudstone. You can kind of pick that off.
Okay.
And sweep it and then cap it.
These are yours, right?
Those are education
Oh, okay.
float.
Educational pieces.
Yeah.
Such an exciting half a second.
You just made the whole movie right there, and to show half the rope and not all of it. One man, one
One
fossil.
jacket. 1 second.
We're the wrong turn.
To save the world.
You can't.
That Paul was actually doing.
That'll work. I think that's what the picture that's up there is, or that I sent. So what's happening with that platform, Greg?
With the windows on research?
Yeah.
That's what we're shooting for.
But I mean, why isn't it up?
No. And I don't know what we're going to do about that.
I would just leave that.
Because it's chunky.
Is that corner piece?
I can't tell. It's too early.
During lunch. We're gonna break for lunch soon, right? Did everyone eat their lunch?
I don't know. I ate my lunch.
Pretty good?
Pretty good.
Not bad?
Not bad. I mean, it's not German food, but you know.
You gotta get all that plaster in there.
I have to use the plaster as mud, right?
The plaster is not gonna work making mud. You can't make mud out of cured plaster.
Can you imagine how good those ribs would be with some barbecue?
Especially after you let it sit in the sun all day.
Barbecue sauropod ribs. It's like the Flintstones all over again. Dude.
Didn't the other family have?
Wasn't he always trying to eat something?
No, that was Fred. Remember, he couldn't take the cat out for the night. Yeah, that was Fred.
Is that so funny though?
Don't remember that. Houses for mud.
Looks nice.
Mud job. Does that mean I can get rid of the rest of the mud?
Still remember that one?
Cervical vertebrae.
Oh yeah.
Can't be saying that in your sleep.
I know. I see it like 9 times a day.
You see, you could have impressed Chef.
Steffi?
I don't know. Lizzie's on the shorthand version of name basis with her. Hey, Chef.
Pickles.
Forgot you used to be in this.
No, I have some on my bag.
Oh, yeah, that's why.
It's alright. No one's around to get smooched. I can have as many.
Oh.
I don't like tuna either. Unite.
Yeah, tuna. We're anti-tuna.
What's wrong with tuna? Gross.
It's gonna be a public
Cats
service
eat it.
announcement right there. Say no to tuna.
So you're gonna.
Cat
Don't say that.
Have you ever had dog food treats? Like the ones that also humans can eat?
No.
Actually, all pet food is fit for human consumption. It's a law.
Oh, really?
It's Christmas.
I mean, look how clean it is, and you got it all dirty.
What more do you
Steal when I get back.
See, that's how they handshake in Germany.
No.
I don't
no,
even
no,
think
no.
they shake hands in
Well,
Germany.
they kiss. That's all kiss.
No.
Oh, Jesus.
I haven't
Now
either.
you
No,
got him
Zeus
more
does-
excited.
Kiss on the cheeks.
France and Germany.
So you were the
Missed
one
out
with
on
the
your
wet fish
opportunity.
handshake.
I know.
No, I don't
Should have run up and give her the double smooch, but
Why
no.
am I not
I guess,
more
I guess
cultural?
they do, yeah.
Wow, that's
And she
Don't
would
they
have been
kiss on the
perfectly
cheek in
okay.
Once he
Texas?
did, I was like,
Yeah. But I'm so used to like not doing it because I'm out of Texas, you know?
Hey, did you start the fried egg?
No. Oh,
I
snap.
need you guys to.
Alright, so
I was
when we first got here, there was a little bit of argument whether we can cook an egg with the temperature out here. I think we can, but without a plastic bag, so we're gonna try it out. See how that goes. Beautiful. Just gorgeous.
Oh, it's spilling. It's spilling.
How are you gonna flip it? You don't have a spatula.
Oh, I do have a spatula.
Really?
No.
It's the other shovel.
Not a
You know,
bad
I have a
idea.
feeling this is going to be really disgusting.
It's not bubbling up yet, but it will.
It's not turning white.
I think it'll take. It is turning white a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
Can't tell.
It's very, very hot.
You're eating that part that's under that mound of dirt.
What part?
That's the part you
This
get.
brings new meaning to an over easy egg.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
I
watching.
think we're kind of going to have to do like a half an hour later.
Are we
Yeah.
scrambling
Oh, yeah,
this? Am I gonna have to scramble it with my finger or no?
Just let it fry.
Okay.
It'll be.
Scramble it. Yep.
Let it fry.
Yeah.
move down, Alex. See this? It's gonna be both. Yeah. And is that I or L? Just approximate that. Oops. Got it? And I think the head. Let's see. Nah. There. Okay.
Of course.
Proximal. Distal. 102. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna clean it up a little.
One that was working in front of Paul.
Oh, Alex.
Alex, that's what it was.
Okay, time to switch shoes. Thanks for the water.
Oh, of course. It's the least we can do.
Yeah, you could have brought tequila or something.
Yeah, right? Paul was trying to get me to bring cases of steaks.
We've been trying to get someone to send us steaks for ages.
And by trying, she means talking about it.
Yeah.
We should get someone to bring us some steaks.
I'm rocking a yellow tent.
You think?
Yep, I got him. There's Paul and Lisa coming back too. Top of the hill.
Yes, very much. There's cold ones that are cut in here. Yeah, there's cold watermelon. Score. Unless somebody ate it already. Oh, here it is.
That's food from the mayor.
Yeah, because we go hard on that. Go hard on that mayo.
That is nasty, dude.
There's more.
What is called the bag?
I don't know. Well, there's another one right here that's actually Ziploc. Yeah, look, this is actually good.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was wondering if like that. I didn't know there were two bags.
That one's good?
Yeah, this one's actually Ziploc. Made Ziploc for yourself.
goes. We're leaving in like 10 minutes to take him to the train station. So yeah, we talked about that on the way up.
If we could just get it to blow.